You're listening to the Two Sleuth Podcast, all about the business of dentistry, hosted by yours truly, Greg Essenmacher, a fixable arch dental expert and founder of G&A Consult, speaking with industry leaders on the dental landscape from their perspective. Welcome back, everyone. Greg Essenmacher. You know me. I don't have to introduce myself, but I do get to introduce a new friend of mine, Colleen Huff. So Colleen and I were just discussing before I hit press record, before I started the show whatsoever. And what I really love about Colleen, let's just rip off the Band-Aid. Let's hear about you being self-taught in so many ways and the challenges that so many of our team members, so many of the office managers, that when you're training, when you're teaching, when you're coaching, and you ask the question, how many of you have actually been taught in a formal way for the role that they're in as an office manager? What do you get? 1% raise their hand? 2% raise their hand?
For dental insurances, I've had one person raise their hand that's had formal training in, at this point, 10 years of training for insurance.
I mean, and realistically, right? You know, in my lane, in the full arch lane, how many times do we ask and raise the question and say, we need you to convert these leads, right, that are coming in from Meta, from Google, from Facebook and Instagram, that's Meta, right? From Google, from all of these sources, even TV, for those that are spending $10, $20, $30,000 a month, up to $100,000 a month with clients of ours, and ask them, hey, why don't you go ahead and convert those into consultations? Just answer the phone, speed to lead. And marketing companies are the one teaching the lead call people. And have they ever had any formal training whatsoever on, I don't know, empathic listening? So they actually show up and you wonder why the no-show rate's 30, 40, 50%. I mean, how crazy trained are we in the dental industry with unrealistic expectations without giving people the tools that are necessary? Am I right?
You're right. The doctors, to get them, they don't think their administrative team members need any training. And that's not the case. You have to have, everybody needs training of some sort. There's a reason why dentists, hygienists, assistants have CE. That's why, ADOM, who's done the FADOMs and the MADOMs, we have to continue that CE to show and keep educating ourselves. And that's
so, and I'm wondering, yeah, and I'm wondering if, is it, and I don't want to play the blame and shame on the doctors and saying it's, their fault necessarily. I'm just wondering if it's value built in, lack of value built in. Is it that programming, isn't as visible or knowledgeable, or what do you think some of the sources of this come from? Because if there were perceived value in the doctors and there was this immediate ROI that was established, right? Because the big groups, right? The DSOs and the groups, they have structure in place, right? It is form, structure, process. Well, not all of them, right? But they realize pretty quickly the investment in that front end in order to hit the metrics and the numbers that they're accountable to. So the independent clinics, right? Or the emerging groups that don't have this or don't value it, where do you think that breakdown is? Where do you think the miss is in that?
I think it's because partially the insurance end of the offices and even the treatment planning and all of what goes into it evolved over time. And so, 30 years ago, you could have someone who was mainly answering the phones, handling a schedule, scheduling patients, collecting some money. It wasn't as complex. The insurance has gotten more and more and more complex. From 30 years ago when I started, it's 10 times more difficult than what I was dealing with. Even in starting, I say that it really got difficult from after 2008. 2010 was when the self-insured plan started poking their head around, and that's when breakdowns became more difficult. And so I think the doctors didn't realize what was being lost and what they were signing up to. And so therefore they don't understand that they're losing money. But when I can show them, listen, if your team isn't coding this, and this is why you're not getting paid. Or if you don't give them this, there is money being lost. You are, if you're writing off things that should have been paid, well, hold on. Has your team member been trained how to fight for that? That it's not supposed to be written off. Do they understand what a downgrade is? And so the doctors, unfortunately, go to school for dentistry, not for business. And that's the other part that gets lost. I live in the Buffalo area, and we have UB Dental School is here. And I've met a couple of students who have they're calling themselves my groupies at this point. Third-year students, they've been following and learning. And these two guys recognize that there's more to dentistry than the dentistry. And so they are taking every business class they can get their hands on. They're learning how to speak to their employees. They're taking my classes to understand the insurance. And that's the piece that wasn't taught. So you have dentists in their 30s, 40s, 50s. That's not what they were taught. So they don't realize what they're missing. And I don't think they understand what goes into what they're asking their admin team to do.
Well, and you strike a chord there certainly as well when you talk about, right, leadership of those that are coming out and learning about leadership because it's an adjunct tool for them
Mhm.
to learn. There's so much to learn on the clinical side for them to become clinically competent. And certainly with, it's not just about the drill and fill and learning how, to prep a crown and a margin and understand all of that. The business side of the business, right? That they're not getting having to learn that aspect, right? The people management side and the leadership side, those that are eager to learn that aspect,
Mhm.
where are they going to get that education from? And that's certainly something that we at GNA Consult talk a lot about, right? With the mindset coaching with the leaders from myself to the leaders of the groups, and then all of the teach, coach, and train side with the team members on converting these big cases over. And then the operation side, which is so critically important in supporting and structure to understand the financing behind it, behind these big cases, all of these aspects of they have to go somewhere to learn this, right? Because they're not getting it in dental school because the dental schools are trying to get them clinically competent in a baseline of learning, not even in more than likely the most profitable margin of those cases that they're talking about. So there's so much involved with this that they're trying to understand that I
Right.
can see why let's just have somebody take care of that, right? That's something that we just have to tolerate when it comes to the lane that you're talking about. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Well, and I think they don't understand the changes that have happened in the industry. So let's say a lot of dentists I tend to meet that become some of my favorite offices are the ones in their maybe 40s and 50s. So when they started doing this, it may not have been as difficult. Maybe they took over a practice and those people knew what they were doing or they've been doing it for 30 years. And then something will happen. COVID woke a lot of them up. But they don't understand unless I make every office sit through a code training as a team. If they're going to work with me, this is my hard and fast rule. And I have made no exception in the last 3 years on it because I did on one and we were not successful. And during that time, they learn what the admin team needs from them to help them do some of this. But the other part is making sure the doctor understands they don't have an understanding of what it takes to verify an insurance, what it takes to okay, they may do their treatment planning in back, but now the front has to figure out how to present it back in a way that they understand, and then they get to talk the money part, which is hard. And if you don't give people those skills and I was very lucky, the very first office I worked at in New Jersey, I will say the man was not completely sane, but he had taken every course there was from every guru out there and taught me some really amazing verbiage skills and how to explain things that has helped me over the years. And not everybody gets that. If I hadn't had him, I don't know if I would have been as successful in certain areas. That training really helped. And that also showed me how much of the training is necessary. And the doctors don't learn that necessarily early on, or they think it just sort of, oh, it's running itself. And if things are good, that's great. But the minute we hit a road bump, I always say the 2008 road bump of the crash in 2008, and it was around long enough. I watched a lot of offices. That's when embezzlement showed up. That's when they started seeing, oh, we're not as profitable as we thought. Same thing happened after COVID. It's like the veil comes off, or that cloud of happiness goes away, and they actually have to really look at their numbers. And the offices that are successful are the doctors that understand everybody needs training in various parts and various ways for what their position is.
Well, and to meet the new challenges in the dental field consistently, right? Because patient populations change, the needs change, competition changes. And if you evolve with it, then you become more competitive, which is critically important. One thing that you shared there, which I think is so essential to hone in on, and it's something that we know and we've learned and are learning consistently, right? So when we work in the full arch lane as a part of a general dentistry practice and with the small groups that we work with as our avatar, that the micro team that we work with in full arch, if we don't have that 360 view of making sure that there's buy-in from all of the team members,
Yeah.
that it's critically important that we get that, right? It's not just the isolation or the silo of one particular group that we're working with and honing on. And you shared that, right? It's not just
Mhm.
those that are billing and filing the insurance claim.
No.
Everybody has to understand how to support that individual aspect of the practice. And it's so critically important to do so. And from our perspective, it's if a patient comes in and they're going to go through some full arch therapy, right? They're going to do an all on X and they're going to get a full mouth rehab in that way. It doesn't matter. They might be walking down the hallway to use the restroom before they have treatment,
Mhm.
for a consultation. That same patient, after they've had their surgery and they have temps in their mouth, right? It might be another a hygienist, or it might be another assistant that's not even a part of that micro team that works on the all on X. But to be able to lift up and say, wow, like, weren't you in here a few months ago? Like, your smile's amazing, right? To be able to lift that up so everybody's a part of encouraging that aspect of the business and the growth because it has such a significant impact, right? And obviously a 20, 30, 50, $60,000 case, but being able to lift up the work that you're doing in that micro team, right? That's doing the insurance billing and how is it that everyone can support that one aspect of the business is so critically important for success that you're experiencing. So, what are some of the things that you do to get the whole team motivated and supportive around what that one aspect that you're dealing with on a daily basis with your teams? Hey there, it's Greg Essenmacher, host of the Two Sleuth podcast and founder of G&A Consult. At G&A, we specialize in transforming full arch dental practices, teaching, coaching, and training teams to deliver an exceptional patient experience, from that first call to delivering final smiles. Whether you're a practice owner, a DSO executive, or a regional leader looking to expand your full arch program, boost same-store sales, or unlock the true profitability of full arch cases, we've got you covered. Ready to see how Full Arch can elevate your practice? Visit the show page or book a discovery call today. Let's turn your potential into results.
Well, so I've broken it down in the offices so that they understand their part of it. So, and if you, I don't know if you saw, but I've written a book, and the book, I have a book out called The Mouthful of Insurance, and the book is kind of the path of the insurance through the whole office and how it touches everybody and their responsibilities. And so it's an ownership of, this is what the admin team does. This is your part of this. Whether you're in or out of network, it doesn't matter whether you're a PPO provider or you're out of network provider. If you're trying to help get that money for that patient, this is what you can do to be part of it. And this is your responsibility of it. And I've had, the biggest fight I get is, well, I don't need to know insurance. And the best analogy I came up with is I looked at every doctor that said that. I say, do you expect your admin team to know clinical terms? Well, of course I do. They have to talk to the patients. Same idea. Do you expect them to know it in detail the same as your assistants? No, but they have to know enough. And it's the same thought process I want them to put into, because you can produce all you want in the back, but if you don't give me what I need to get it paid, I'm going to be writing it off. And that's a loss for everybody. So explaining that so that everybody kind of understands that full circle of how it really happens. And I still, do I always get full buy-in? No. The hardest one sometimes is the doctor, God bless them. They don't want to hear about the insurance. I'm not saying you have to, I'm not saying make a decision based on it, and I never want them to. I don't care. If it's something not covered, that's fine. I don't want you to not present it. I want you to make sure the patient's aware so it's not a surprise bill. That's where the bad press comes from. Oh, doctors are just out in it for the money. Well, no, that's what you have to explain to the patient. The plan your employer has chosen is the statement I always give. I'm so sorry, that plan your employer chose does not cover that. Go back and talk to them, giving that education. It's the same type of education you give them on why they need the work is also, if you can, because everybody, especially right now, money's tight for people. And they're going to remember the office that helped them know ahead of time what their cost was. And they're also going to remember the one that billed them later, and not in the same way.
Yeah, the no gotcha, right, is critically important too. What you just talked about is what we talk about as well. We call it our single sheet, right? So that everybody's fully aware of what are the steps in the process that a patient goes through. What's the patient journey for their procedure? And
Right.
from the janitor to the surgeon to the dental assistant to the bookkeeper to the person up front to everybody in the practice knows here are the 5 or 6 steps that everybody goes through when they're going through a full mouth rehab of dental implants, right?
Right.
These are the steps. And then just one line underneath it, one simple bullet point. What does that mean, right? The consultation. What happens at a consultation? They get a complimentary CT scan and they review what the next steps forward look like and what they qualify for. Then the next thing is a smile design where they take the pictures and all the records to prepare them for surgery. Then the day of surgery, they have this and they get their temporaries. Then they come in for their prototype, and that's where they decide, how is that temporary working? What adjustments need to be made? And then final delivery of the right. I mean, just pretty straightforward. But
Right.
everyone in the practice should be able to name all 5 steps or 6 steps, whatever the process is. Some have an extra step in, some people deliver the temp the day after, whatever your process is, everybody needs to know what those steps are. Very
Absolutely.
clear, very straightforward. Now, the dental assistant or surgical assistant in the back, they better know a lot more than that, right? They should know some really fine details, right? One of them might even be, I don't know, printing the temporary day of. They might be sending off for photogrammetry. They might be, I mean, there's a whole lot more. However, everybody's got to know those basic steps, right? And that's exactly what you're talking about in your lane, which is everybody, you expect people like the people that are doing insurance to at least know basic clinical, then you should know basic insurance, right? You can't just put your head in the sand and say, oh, I don't want to see it. You deal with it, right? It's really just, it's that 360 view. And I think you use that. And we talk about that at GNA
Mhm.
Consult to having a 360 view. And I think it's so critically important. And one of the things that you mentioned, right? You don't always get 100% team buy-in, and sometimes it's the doctor that, frankly, stands in the way. And so what we're finding is that having that, being selective about clients that come along,
Mhm.
and it's a good place to be when you can be more selective where clients come along. What are you finding as far as like an ideal coaching client that and consulting client that you're finding for what you do? Where is that avatar for you that you're finding that's really receptive, where you can have the most impact with a practice in particular?
I think the doctors that have realized that what their administrative team is doing takes more time than they ever did is part of it. And ones that are open to change, they have to understand that sometimes they have to change. Those are probably ideal. Now, do I always get that? No. And sometimes you don't know what you're getting into till you're actually there. They may seem, you know, I'm very upfront as to my expectations of the office and the doctor and the assistants and everybody before I go in. They seem to buy in, but then, that's when you have to figure out who's your pushback from. And then you have to figure out how to win that one over to understand how it values them. And sometimes, unfortunately, when it comes to consulting, sometimes it weeds out who's not really all in with the practice. And I'm sure you guys run into that too. And that one person can tank everything else that's good, and you don't need that. And that's sometimes the hardest lesson that happens. Sometimes you think you have a great buy-in team. And that's where I'm so grateful we're past only Zoom meetings because it's very hard to get a feel. And I have some offices that the doctor doesn't want to spend the money to bring me. And I explained to him that's great, but it's much harder on Zoom to read that body language of that person who's sitting just outside or they're skating outside that camera so that I can help get them to where they need to be. Because you can pick up a lot when you're in person training. Body language gives you a lot of info on people.
Yeah, the body language, the energy, the participation level, all of those things, the side eye that you can feel when somebody's behind you, even,
Mhm.
certainly for sure. And so I know in what we do, like technology, but not technology for technology's sake, but really what can help you to accelerate the learning or to be able to shorten or uh, lessen the amount of burden that the manual labor, and we're constantly looking for those tools. And unfortunately, a lot of times we're implementing and then it's like, yeah, that's not really what, as good as it could be. But also, we find that a lot of clients, when we onboard them, they have a ton of tools that either they're not using their max capacity or they're over inundated with them. So what are you finding that are some good technology tools that you're using with your clients, that are really effective in your lane of what you're doing?
Well, they need to be utilizing websites to their full capacity. They need to be utilizing any real-time eligibility, things that are out there. I really like using Vine Trellis in a practice for the claims follow-up. There's a lot of, the new AI with, like, Pearl. If the office has something like that, it really streamlines, and there's a lot of advances that keep happening that makes it less of an administrative burden on the front so they can focus more on the patients, making sure they have good systems in place just in general to make that follow-up easier. The web, but using any type of auto anything. There's, Curve does auto posting if you're doing EFTs. Utilizing so if you have a software that does that, the doctor might say, "Oh, well, they wanted to take, it's an extra whatever, $30 charge a month." And I'm like, "That's an hour of your front desk time, and that's gonna save them more than an hour, so it's worth it." Those types of things. Every little bit you can take away to make it easier, So it's so different from when I first started. I go back to before electronic claims. I really can date myself. It's really fun if I'm with an audience because I'll start talking about a dot matrix printer, and based on where the laughs are, I know who's one of my, who is there in it with me. Or then you have the younger ones looking at me going, "A what?" And we have to explain it to them. But there's
Exactly. Find people in the audience.
I can sometimes tell a joke like that and determine my age group that's with me based on the laughter and know if they've been in the field longer than 20 years or not by that one. So,
It's the cutoff. The dot matrix printer. I love it because there's always certain jokes. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's the folded maps and the triptychs before the roadmap, the journey roadmap with GPS. Yeah, that's mine when I speak. Yeah, we all of our things. Yes, for AAA, exactly. Yeah, we grew up fairly poor. Like tomato soup over noodles was a meal. So yeah, we didn't have triptychs, but the rich kids did. So, but I knew some people who did. So we
Didn't use them either, but yeah.
they were. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Colleen, this is the point of the program that all my guests play a little something called What the Sleuth is Going On. It's
Okay.
3 rapid fire questions. First thing that comes to mind. Are you ready to play?
All right, I'm ready to play.
Okay. Question number 1. What's the worst bad breath you've ever encountered?
We had a patient who, after he went in back, my friend went to take x-rays and his front teeth folded back on him. And it almost made everyone pass out at the front. So that one is the worst. And she came up front later and yelled at me for scheduling him. I'm like I could tell over the phone. Yeah, that one was
Right.
the worst.
How are you supposed to know? Like the lisp? I mean, oh, we're flapping in the wind. Like, I mean, like the breeze and it just flaps.
She still blamed me.
Oh, no, what are you gonna do? All right, and question number 2. No, there's sometimes it happens, right? Might have a few issues going on with some perio going on.
Yeah, I think a little, yeah.
Question number 2.
Mhm.
If you could change one thing about your smile, what would it be?
I'd always make him a little bit straighter.
Yeah, that's a very common answer. That yeah. When we did our 100th episode, we kind of compiled all of the answers to the questions and like did a little pie chart. So
Yeah.
straighter and whiter were the
Yep.
were the two that like tied for the top answer. Yeah,
I have
you know,
I have a sister-in-law with perfect teeth that she did not pay a penny for that people would just assume. I mean, she honestly has what
genetics.
it's just amazing. And people have asked her, like, "Where'd you get that done?" And she's like, "What do you?" She has no idea what they're talking about. They're just perfect.
Right. There are those.
Yeah.
There are those. That's okay. I know I had clear aligner therapy like 12 years ago, and I'm very, very I wear my night guards, I wear like the retainer
Mhm.
every night, and there's still drift. It just, so I'll probably have to go through, refinement here sometime soon. But oh well, I'm willing to do it. Question number 3. If you could go back and be the inventor of any dental product, and no, you can't choose your own,
Okay.
which one would you choose and why?
Mm. I think I would go with the AI X-rays that auto-populate to the insurance claim, so I don't have to know what X-ray number, tooth number, any of that. That would be mine. Because
Right.
figure when I first
Efficiency, right?
when I well, not only that, but coming from a non-clinical background, figuring out tooth numbers and X-rays to match was my most difficult part to learn. So if I had had a tool like that and could have invented it, that I didn't have to then learn as much about X-rays, I'd have been happy and wouldn't have to
Do you know,
date them.
still to this day, I'm right-handed, and so when you put up your finger for number 1, that's how I know the upper right is number 1, at least in the United States, right? And you work your way around. That's I still have to do that 1, I did 16, 17, 20, my and for those of you who are just listening to the audio portion, head over to YouTube at, like, the 23rd, 24th minute, because Colleen and I both did the same thing with the 1 and our fingers around our upper and lower jaw. Yeah, that was good. We both did the same thing at the same time. We literally it was like we were playing charades, right? That's
Sometimes
good.
I have to though. That's I still, if I'm working on something, I'll find myself going, "Okay, wait, 1 through, yeah, all right, yeah, that's what you do. That's right."
That checks out, yeah. Well, Colleen, you've been a true joy, and in the last few minutes, I wanna respect your time and my listening audience's time. Is there anything I haven't asked you or that you wanna share with my listening audience? I know you talked about your book, A Mouthful of Insurance, and I'm glad you got that, and I think that was released just, like, last summer. Yeah, I know that that's something that people can pick up. Yeah, but anything else? We didn't even get a chance to talk about your family. Didn't get to talk about, your dad being in dental, starting Great Lakes Orthodontics in the Buffalo area. We didn't even get to talk about any of the fun stuff.
He was on the original sales team for Great Lakes, yeah. There's nobody left over there anymore that they worked with, but he and that's where he met my stepmom. She was a hygienist. I do have some I have an online course that I just released in March. It's a
Please, I'll just
jumpstart.
find it.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
you can find it at my website, which is really hard to find. It's colleenhuff.com, HUFF, so it's pretty easy to find me. I do have a Facebook page, Colleen Huff, the dental insurance coach, if they want to follow me there. I'm getting better on LinkedIn. And I am going to be speaking around the country at different places. Or if you are if your area is looking for somebody to come, there's still some states I haven't been to. So I'm trying to get to quite a few of them out west. I need to get more northwest specifically. So, but no, I'm around for questions. If people have quick questions, I don't mind email me. I had somebody say, "Well, how much will it cost?" I'm like, "You have a simple question. It's okay. Call me." So don't think there's always a charge.
Well, love that, and we'll make sure that gets in the show notes as well. And a former guest of ours too, and a really good friend at GNA Consult, Margaret McGuckin. Sounds like you're the same way, which is, man, this industry, like, people help people. Just reach
Yeah.
out, right? I mean, if it gets into a long elaborate, then we'll talk about, some fee structure, but just ask the question. I'm the same way, and I mentor people who are coming up in the industry too, and I think it's great, and I'm so grateful for this industry and have been so grateful for this conversation, Colleen. It's been great getting to know you. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Two Sleuth podcast. My guest has been Colleen Huff, who's been in the industry for more than a few years and it knows everything about insurance and revenue cycle management. Thank you so much for being here today with us.
Thanks for having me.
If you need help with converting lead calls into consultations, closing consults into more full arch cases, or creating a more strategic marketing message and branding for your practice or group, follow me for more tips or reach out to GNA Consult for a discovery call today.